Okay. I think it's time that we started talking about threats to the Casuarina Coastal Reserve, and just as a way of sort of opening the door to that, I think it's worth mentioning that in 2002, a survey of visitors found that there were 935,000 visits per annum to Casuarina Coastal Reserve. So it's right up there in terms of popularity to visitors. And those of you who are tuning in today will know that it's been pretty crowded lately. There's an enormous number of people using the Coastal Reserve at the moment. But if there were 935,000 visits per annum in 2002, we can only imagine that it is now well over 1 million visits per annum. And we've also had new suburbs up against the Casuarina Coastal Reserve in the shape of lions. We've had some sort of residential infill and probably more density of housing along the coastline altogether. People are really seeking out these places. So there's a lot of pressure from people on Casuarina Coastal Reserve. Dave, would you like to lead off on this, or shall I?
Oh, yeah, look, I'm happy to say a word or two and then pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, look, there's a number of threats to reserve, and I guess Deb's just indicated one, just people pressure. And one of the forms in which that people pressure arrives is sadly arsonists. And the image that we can see up there at the moment is, well, it's taken just near the Free Beach car park, or from a Free Beach car park, and it's looking towards the coast. And this was after the fires that happened last year. And there's quite clear evidence that a series of fires there were lit by arsonists. I guess this is probably perhaps a bit hard for people to remember, but one of those photographs I showed earlier about the sorghum, the golden fields of sorghum, well, one of the trees that we've got in front of us here is actually the very same tree. And so these fires have all sorts of impacts on the countryside, but one of the impacts on that coastal area is actually it encourages more sorghum, which is great. I love sorghum; it's a great plant, but sorghum itself burns really well, which then there's a bit of a reinforced cycle of the grasses get promoted, and then you get more fuel, which means next time it burns, and you're likely to get a hotter fire, which will have an impact on the woody vegetation. And I guess in a minute or two we'll jump onto some weed issues. But one of the really important aspects of those weeds is the changes in fuel load. But
Dave,
Deb, did you want to say more about the fire bit?
Yeah, I'd like to say a bit more about fires. I heard that last year there were 26 fires in Casuarina Coastal Reserve, and I think it's really important, and long-term users of the reserve will know this, that the damage from a fire is not fixed in a year. It actually takes a really long time for that landscape to recover as a diverse, mature set of trees that are habitats for all of the insects, reptiles, mammals and birds that should belong there. It takes a really long time. As Landcare, it's certainly taken us more than 10 years with our work along the dunes. We'd be looking at definitely another 10 years before we can get anything like the sort of vegetation mix and the maturity of the trees that we need. And some of the species of birds, and I know black-tailed, red-tailed black cockatoos has come up in the chat. You know, there are cockatoos that need big trees. There are birds that need hollows in mature old trees. So the tree that we can see in the centre of the shot here, the dead casuarina, you know, it's not food for any bird. It's not shelter for many animals that need it. So fire is a devastating impact on Casuarina Coastal Reserve, and in recent years, it's been almost right along the dunes from Rapid Creek through to Lee Point. A sustained effort to burn that whole coastline. So for everybody who's tuned in this morning, I'd ask you that if you see a fire in Casuarina Coastal Reserve and the rangers are not there, the fireys are not there, please call 000. that fire should not be happening. Last year we had fires into the monsoon rainforest, the monsoon vine forest. That area should not be burnt. Those fires opened up canopy where there was sunshine going into that area. Then there was grass and some of the really bad weedy grasses. So when somebody came along and set a match to it, we lost monsoon vine forest. So yes, if you see a fire, please call 000. There will be a few fires that the rangers set, and that's just in terms of protecting assets in the park. They need to do an annual burn along the back of Macrillis Circuit there, where the houses are so close to the reserve. They do a few other small protected burns, but generally, if there's a fire in the reserve, it shouldn't be happening, and the sooner we can get it out, the better. Over to you, Dave. Okay, well, perhaps if we can jump onto the next slide. So I guess in some ways it's an extension of the fire story. But what we've got in the foreground here is mission grass, and so this is one of the weedy species that's been introduced to the top end. That really has a huge impact, both from its competition with native species, but also because of the huge fuel loads. And you can see this photograph was taken just right next to, I guess it's again near the Free Beach car park. We seem to be coming back there a lot this morning. And you can see we've got on the right-hand side, we can see a black wattle that succumbed to the fires last year. On the left-hand side, we can see a casuarina that succumbed. Sitting in the middle, paperbark, which is thankfully a little bit more resilient to fire, but enough fire and you can even smack the paperbarks around. But that papery bark actually does a magnificent job of insulating them. But yeah, look, mission grass. So it's a huge issue in the reserve. It's a huge issue in lots of places around Darwin. And one of the things I'd ask people to do in regards mission grass is be aware about spreading the seed. And we're just coming into the seed time now, where the seeds are being set. So for sure, enjoy the reserve. And again, we've seen lots of comments this morning in the chat about people enjoying the paths, enjoying the diversity of habitats, and obviously a fantastic recreational use of reserve, which is great. But if you're moving around and you're wandering and you're traveling through some patches with mission grass, then try not to spread the seed. Just be really, really careful about getting it on your clothing and spreading it around. So, Deb, did you have anything else you wanted to say about mission grass? The less there is, the better, Dave. Yeah, sure. Yes, yeah. Well, in terms of the less there is, the better. Lou, if we can jump to the next slide. This is another one, which is the less we have, the better. So this is gamba grass, and this is well just as big, perhaps a bigger fire issue than as mission grass. So this photograph was taken up towards Lee Point, and you just see that as well what I would think of as a horrendous fuel load in the foreground there. So I mean it's just, well, the fires you get 3 or 4 times the fuel load that we'd normally get with native grass species, and the fire intensity can be up to 8 times more intense. So it just absolutely smacks the overstory. So it'll kill the overstory trees. And thankfully, there's actually been huge amounts happen in terms of gamba grass, generally in the NT in the last few years, and there's very much an ongoing program to try and do stuff about gamba grass. Gamba grass, fortunately, is actually, in my opinion, far more controllable than mission grass. I'm not trying to trivialise it; it's still a huge job to control it, but it is far more controllable. So, yeah, there's significant effort going on, and I think what we're going to see is later this year is scheduled for a new gamba grass weed management plan that'll steer the direction for the NT community, not just Casuarina Coastal Reserve, but steer the direction for the next decade. But yeah, Deb, would you like to add anything more about gamba? I think the same as before, Dave. The less there is, the better. I mean, the density of the grass in that photograph really shows you how it would absolutely smother any attempts at regrowth. Little plants just wouldn't survive in that. And then, like you say, add a match to the dry stuff and it's a tinderbox. The other thing about gamba, I understand, is that it can invade pretty intact vegetation communities. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, most of these grasses will do better if there's a bit of disturbance. So yeah, you're right. It will invade quite intact vegetation communities, but I guess having intact vegetation communities are invaded less quickly than if you've got disturbed communities. So there's sort of a graduating scale there. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that yes, it can invade pretty much undisturbed areas.